Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about how to actually get better at cEDH. So I'm going to talk about kind of my experience of how to actually get better at Magic elsewhere in Magic and other formats, and kind of also tie it to some mentalities that's unique to cEDH/Commander, and talk about the issue of ego. And the reason why I want to cover this is because I lurk on the cEDH subreddit a lot, and I kind of see the same questions about like, what deck should I play? What do you think about this list? What are the cards I should be playing, etc., etc. And I feel like they're asking the wrong questions. They are the right questions in the sense like these are the questions to be asking to get direction in the format. But for a lot of players, they want to be performant or really good or just convert more in a tournament because competitive cEDH or competitive Commander. And the mindset that a lot of players I meet isn't exactly conducive to leading to that result. And this is something that I used to run into a lot when I did coaching or offered coaching, which is why I stopped offering coaching, is that players have an expectation of like, I'm going to win the tournament. That's their goal, right? And then they'll find a coach to try to like obviously get to that goal. But the issue is like the mentality behind how they're going to arrive to that journey is not there. So they'll expect like, I'm going to do coaching. It's going to give me that 15% increase in my like conversion or win rate, when there's like behavioral kind of problems, or like when there's like behaviors that's holding them back from getting to the next level. And there's also just a general like lack of expertise. So today I want to talk about kind of like how you should feel when on your journey to improving, right? And kind of what skills you need so you can practice it by yourself. Because a coach can give you goals. A coach can kind of help identify key issues and kind of put you on a path to success. But a coach is never going to be the person who actually like puts you into the right place where you can start performing better, right? Like they definitely could. I've worked with a lot of coaches. I have a separate channel with all the best Magic players coaching me at Magic, right? This is a journey that I've been going on. This is why I can talk about it with some level of expertise, is because I know how it feels. And this isn't to say that coaches can't do that. Coaches definitely can, but I think cEDH has an issue where it's ironic because the label of the format says competitive Commander and everyone expects it to be competitive, but players have different goals. And we need to talk about kind of like different types of play, like the different type of player you are, what your goals are, so then we can like talk about what your journey should be like. Because one thing I run into a lot, or also see a lot, is players being frustrated with their own journey and their path, not realizing like kind of the goal they have wasn't realistic. So that's like a lot of like preamble to talk about coaching and improving. So let's dive into how you actually should be improving, right? The first thing is, I think this is like the baseline level of how you can be a performant tournament player, right? And if this is your goal to be a performant, like a good tournament player who has like good results, this is kind of like the mindset that you need to have and the comfortability with the tournament. And if you don't have this, that's totally okay. But that's your first goal. So this is also from my experience of like, I've reached a level of playing Magic where I've played so much Magic and competed in so many different formats and worked with so many different people and understand so much about Magic that I can generally pick up a deck and pick up a format pretty quickly and like do like decently well. I keep doing air quotes because like decent is like kind of dependent on the player. What I think is like decent, is like consistently getting into the second half of the event and like losing in quarters or finals. But actually, that's also like a bad kind of way to describe it, because another big issue is how results-oriented players are. But anyways, sorry, let's get back on track. So let's talk about where you need to be, right? When you play cEDH, when you go to a tournament, your first goal should be that when you sit down, you just know, right? When you look at all the meta decks, what they're going to do. And an exercise that I do a lot with people I used to coach is I would show I'll randomize a pod, randomize the seating, sit the player down, be like, what do you think each person's going to do, right? What do you think their main strategy is? How they're going to win? What are they thinking about? And what should you be thinking about, right? And if you can't answer that, that's okay. We should work on that. But that's like a level of meta understanding that you need to have. And from a behavioral standpoint, if you're asking that question when you sit down in a tournament, you're not good enough. Like that, you're just going to expect that this event, you're probably not going to do well, which is fine, right? We also play events to improve our skills, to improve our comfort in this level, like playing at this level, and all the other behaviors that go into it. But if you can't sit down and just know, right? Generally, with like at least with the main decks and what they want to do, if you can't answer that question and just automatically have like the game plan of what you need to do, you need more reps, right? And that's kind of be that's like the main kind of like answer. It's just you need more reps. You need to play more, right? There's no trick around it. Coaching can skip some amount of reps, but the only way you can improve is actually just like putting in the time and playing, right? We'll talk about how you should be playing to be like more conducive. I don't know if that's the right word, to improvement, because bad practice also is a waste of time. But overall, kind of the main goal is you need to play more, right? And if you're sitting down, you can't answer that question, you got to play more. You got to do more like learning, right? And in terms of learning, like I think it's good to watch content. That's a good way to like kind of understand how decks behave, how like the deck you're interested in might behave, how players navigate situations. But the reason why reps are so important is because watching and doing obviously is two very different experiences. Until you're sitting at that moment, like at that table, faced with that challenge, even if you watch kind of like how the game plays out, you're not going to have the same experience. You're not going to be able to like kind of recognize a pattern that's happening on the table and automatically know the answer. And that's kind of how our brain kind of like handles these things, is that it craves challenges. And once it has synthesized enough of the challenge to form a pattern, that's what becomes behavior, right? And the reason why we play reps of many things is so like we play a lot of reps of a game is so that we can be exposed to as many of those challenges as possible. So by the time you sit down at a tournament, one thing that I think is like, I describe one of my good friends, Jacob Pablo. He's like he's just a grinder in general. And I joke that like he doesn't wake up until like top 8, you know, like you can tell when grinders or really experienced players are playing, a lot of it's automatic. It's because they've done the reps. They have the experience to play through a lot of things where seemingly difficult challenges to a newer or mid-level player is just like another Tuesday to those players, right? And that's, again, the level you want to reach at before we can even talk about how to win a tournament, right? That's just the baseline of where you want to be, right? If you're like picking up a deck and going, I'm gonna play in this tournament, I'm gonna pick up this deck, I'm gonna try and win it in 2 weeks, and you've never played like an ad nauseum deck, or like have you never played Rogsai, you can read everything, you can practice everything. If you're a very good Magic player, you probably can rely on that background to like get you there faster. But you shouldn't expect like I'm gonna pick up this deck and win the thing, right? Unless if the tournament has like a strange structure or it's like very, very small, you know, variance is also a thing. Again, not to focus too much on results, but just the point is like if you don't have that experience in that background, just don't expect you're gonna win, and that's okay, right? Because our first goal again is that we want to just understand the meta and be at a comfort level of the game where you're not asking kind of like the basic questions. You're not trying to figure out how to like win after like drawing 30, 40 cards, right? You can always tell like a good Storm player and like a newer Storm player. It's just the way they sequence their rituals, right? There's just certain behaviors like I'm going to put all my mana out first, then I'm going to shift all my mana to the right colors, then I'm going to like do whatever before my brain even starts to fire to be like, oh, now I need to take this action, right? Because a lot of it's so automatic, right? That only comes from experience. So that's kind of why like a lot of the questions I see online about like, I want to bring this deck, what's my best percentage to win? Like, yeah, you can be given a list of all the tier 1 decks, but if you don't put the reps in and you don't really put the time in, you're probably not gonna do well, and that's okay. That's just the experience, right? So for everyone who's like listening, I think if you want to do this exercise yourself, if you're not very comfortable or aware, literally all I do is just like I have a little board and I just put up 3 decks I randomize and just like sit there and think about it, right? I've read a lot of kind of sports like performance improvement books, and basically one of the learnings is like When you're practicing, take all the time you need to practice, right? That's the scenario or context where it's you should be spending as much time as possible to think everything through and expand your knowledge, right? When you're competing, that's not where you're really like kind of stretching, that's not where you're supposed to be asking all the questions. When you're competing, Mike Flores taught me that like in a tournament, it's decided by like 15% or like 30% of like key actions that you take. There's like, maybe a better way to describe it is like there's only 30% of the actions you take are like game winning actions, right? Mastery is recognizing that you're conserving your brain power to dedicate to that 30%. First of all, you recognize that 30% and where the game winning decisions are, and being able to give yourself space to not gloss over them, recognize it, and figure out the action that's most likely going to lead you to success, right? And that's why experience is so important. Reps are so important, is because if you're trying to figure out, if you're sitting down against two Kinnons and like a T and K, and you're playing like T and T, and you generally have no, like, I don't know how I'm going to beat this, like, you're not good enough. Like that is like the most standard, like, baseline thing you need to like understand, right? And I know cEDH has a lot of different compositions of pods, but if you don't have a game plan to like just general pods, and when you sit down, you're like, oh God, there's 3 Kinnon players, like, I'm not gonna win this, right? Then why did you register that deck? Like, there's really bad play, like there's bad game experiences, sure, but when you're competing, that's just what it is, right? You need to be able to roll with it and fight through it. And you need to have experience going into it, because while you might have issues with those kind of pods and beating those kind of pods, someone else doesn't. The better player who's probably going to win knows how to do it, right? And if you get paired up with that player near the end of the event where they're more fresh than you are because you're learning everything, you're going to lose. And that's okay. Again, losing's okay as long as we're here to learn, right? So another thing I want to touch on is kind of, I see a lot of threads are like, what do you think about these 5 cards? Or like my deck list, you know, what do you think about my 99 relative to like the meta, right? Obviously deck list is very important, right? If your deck doesn't play with 6 daddy, like that's just bad, right? Like there are cards that are just objectively what you should be playing, right? But then there's like a level where like players start to be like trying to find the perfect list. And they're like, well, I think because the winning list is like this one and they play these cards, I'm going to tech this card and I'm going to try and like beat them that way, right? And that level of metagaming is also good if you are good, like if you know what's happening. But also like kind of a big thing that I believe in is that deck list is like, I don't know, 50%, maybe 60. Okay, it's like something around 50 to like 70% of like what dictates the result, right? Because if you play a bad deck, obviously you're not going to do well. But there's also a degree of like when you're playing a good deck, like a meta deck, and you're playing like just a good enough list, your piloting is going to be the thing that really, really matters. And of course, you want to like maximize your chances to win by having the best list relative to the meta with the best skill level to leverage those cards. But I also just think most players kind of like asking that question is not at the place to be asking that question, if that makes sense. Like if you're not confident in your own deck list or confident in your slots or whatever, I don't know, like play more and figure out like, so that you have the confidence to test those cards, right? And the reason why I say like that is because you can use a lot of resources like Discord, Reddit, and whatever community resources you have to ask questions and kind of build on like community knowledge. And this is starting to dig into like good sources of information and what's good practice. But basically one kind of like learning that I have, or one philosophy, I guess, is that like, or an example is that John Finkel can't tell you why he's good, right? Like he knows he's good. We all know John Finkel's good, but John Finkel is notorious for how like the way he describes Magic might not be as detailed as someone else. Like he just knows. He has like, John Finkel is the GOAT of Magic because he's, you know, super good at it. But the way he describes it might not, like he can't tell you why, you know, like if you want to learn all the secrets to being John Finkel, he can never tell you why, because it's just like he has that expertise already. It's like intuitive, right? And this is kind of getting to like what I was talking about earlier. with the mastery and the expertise of the meta information, all that stuff, and like behavior, it's about like having that intuition. Something that I've learned from like reading chess articles a lot is that when I think it's just like psychology or like whatever, your brain is calculating and synthesizing and coming up with results without you, like subconsciously, while you're still solving problems. It already has solved many problems, right? And that's what drives intuition, is that because we've done something so many times, we don't even recognize the pattern because our brain has absorbed it and synthesized and made us act in a certain way, right? Which is why, again, reps are so important, is because you sit there and your brain has synthesized like certain patterns that you are not like cognitive of, but it will lead to you making the right decision, because when you play more and win more and kind of navigate that situation more, you're just going to know better, right? And again, that's why I think coaching's like not that great for cEDH, is because the coach can't teach you that. The coach can walk you through a game. The coach can give you the questions to be asking at key decisions, so you train yourself with the behavior to ask those questions to be better, but they'll never be able to put you at the behavior of, or like they'll never give you the training that you need to actually be like performant. Right. I'll dig into why I'm like kind of digging into cEDH. I think coaching is useful in general, across all of Magic, but the reason why I don't like it in cEDH. But anyways, back to kind of learning and good practice. Those players who are kind of like sharing their knowledge on like public spaces is not to discount their expertise, but like if you think about a pro testing team, they trust their peers more than they would go to like a random Discord, right? Because they have a level of confidence in what they need to do, and they know that the peers that they're selecting or working with have a level of confidence in their decision making, or they're asking the right questions, right? When they're selecting the cards to go into their deck. So going back to the original discussion, when you're like, I think these are the 5 cards. What do you think? There needs to be a level of confidence to it. Like if you're like just saying because like, oh, I think these 5 cards look neat, or like, oh, I see there's these 5 cards are being played here and I notice it here, should I play them? If you're like, if you can't form a strong confidence to just try it and be wrong and learn from it, I think that's like another behavioral kind of like, that's a behavior that you should improve upon as well. It's just understanding like you're gonna be wrong a lot of times and you're never gonna have like the perfect list. You're gonna have to trust that you're gonna be leaking. I think that's like the phrase. You're going to be leaking equity. Like you're going to be making mistakes no matter what. Everyone will. But you'll need to trust that your skill set is able to deliver the result you'll need because of repetition again, right? So I'm going to practicing, and this is going to start to get into the ego conversation. So I had like a very long conversation with a friend. I know he's watching it. I think it's so important to talk about this. cEDH. Okay. Actually, I'm not going to talk about cEDH. Magic. I'm going to talk about ego in Magic first. Everyone has a level of ego. Ego is the thing that drives us to do great things, right? As dumb as bad as it sounds, right? I think people who say like, I'm not doing it for ego is like a liar, right? Like everyone wants to feel good about like what they do, right? They want to view themselves in a good way, right? The issue is when ego kind of consumes you and makes you like kind of make poor decisions. When you have too much of it, that's when it's bad, right? But I think all the great Magic players have a degree, like have some level of ego, right? At some point you learn how to like push it down, but it's still the driver, right? You want to be the best. You want to like prove to everyone. I think this was the phrase that I think LSV used, or I forgot who said this. Someone said that like kind of like all Magic players' dream is to prove they're right. And prove that they're right through the list they're playing, through their composition, through the archetype. Like people love proving themselves. And that's Magic as a whole, right? cEDH is unique because of the competitive name in the format, competitive commander. And it's kind of like created a lot of issues with just like talking about cEDH in general, because there's an extra focus on like, if you're not bringing a competitive list, why are you even playing it, right? But if you go to like a LGS standard modern meetup, people will bring jank, right? People will bring their own homebrews and compete with it. Their goal is not to win the whole thing. Their goal is like, if I have 1 win out of 4 matches, I'm happy, right? But you can't say they're not playing modern. You can't say they're not like playing. They're playing the same format as you are. CEDH just has that like annoying little like label or prefix that creates this unnecessary discussion of like, I only want to be playing against competitive lists because this is a competitive format. And if the player is not competitive, like this doesn't count, right? Like you're going to run into players who aren't competitive. You're going to go to where half the pod is like a pre-con, right? Like that's the meme and you'll have to win it, right? And you also have to recognize the format just also will end up with a lot of games where the newer player is going to make a mistake and that's going to profit your opponent and not you, right? I guess that's a separate conversation to be like, why aren't you able to like design your deck or play in a way that you can like abuse that, right? Totally different thing. But why am I talking about ego? It's because for this peer of mine, they're trying their best to play like their list, their archetype, right? This commander to beat kind of like the top tier, right? Like, can Roxai be considered top tier? I know this might be a hot topic. Seems kind of bad now, but like TNK, Rogthras, TNT, all that, like the other decks, I can't think of it right now. I've played against an Agila, didn't feel so good. I don't know. Like, let's just agree to like some sort of like archetype of like top tier list, right? Let's not get into that discussion. But like, they can't beat those lists, right? Because they're trying to live the Magic player dream that I'm gonna like me and this list, we're gonna beat it all. We're gonna be able to brew our way into being the best, like having the best version that can beat those decks, right? And basically, my response was everything I told you earlier. Is that first of all, you're not like your mindset's not correct. Your mindset is focused on kind of like proving this list. And the loss is hurt. The loss hurt extra because now it's like kind of creating doubt in your decision making when there should be no doubt. You're here to learn. You're here to sit down, play the game, figure out what are the real questions you should be asking or the challenges you should be solving in the match, and then deliver on that every single time, consistently, time and time again, right? If you sit down and you're like, man, my deck sucks against that meta deck, you better have a good reason why you're playing that deck, right? From like a purely competitive player mindset, right? And that's the way I view cEDH now. This is also why I haven't made cEDH content, is because a lot of time it's like, I can recommend you a list, but I know it's bad. But that's a channel thing we have to solve later. But going back to this player, and I'm sure this is like resonant with a lot of cEDH players, is that the format for Commander is personal. It's about brewing, it's about picking characters that you're interested in and kind of pushing it to however you want to push it, right? You can make a silly deck, you can make a strong deck, right? It's always been a hard sell to in cEDH, at least, in all my history, making content, talking about it, meeting people in it, to be like, you should only play the best list, right? From a competitive point of view, of course, that's what I should say, and that is what I say. But there is always going to be a very large group of players who's like, I just want to play Grand Arbiter Augustin because I think he's funny, right? Like, deck's bad, right? You know who you are. But you're going to do it anyways, right? And you're going to roll with the licks. You're going to lose. You're going to have one win out of 6 rounds and be like, Arby's did it. I'm still in the game, right? But if you're playing with a handicap or like playing with that, like you made that decision, you just have to recognize you're not going to win as much. And I think that's like one of the main things I want to talk about, or want to highlight, is that just being honest with what your goals are and why you play or compete, right? If you can, this is from modeling camp. I think about this a lot. Coco Rocha, I bet most of you don't even know who that is, says there's only 2 types of jobs, one for the book and one for the bank, right? Book is for kind of like your portfolio. It's like a job that you like, that makes you feel good. And bank is obviously the one that like, makes you money, right? You might not make you as happy, but it pays you. So it also makes you happy that way. And I think it's like very similar here, like your mindset, right? Are you here to win? Or are you here to win your way? Because if you're going to win your way, you're just going to recognize that it's going to like be longer, it's be harder, and the payoff might be more satisfying at the end, but you have to recognize that you are taking the harder path. And because you're taking the harder path, you also just have to like adopt the competitive mindset that your deck is bad and you have to do everything you can within the rule that you've created, that has to be this commander, has to be these cards or whatever, to try to beat the metagame. And if the metagame's too good, you just have to recognize it's too good for your strategy and recognize that you're not going to win as much as someone who has no limit, right? The true competitor, I know this might like sound bad, but like whatever. The competitor who's purely here to win the event will play literally anything and not have any limitation, self-imposed limitation. They're gonna have like a higher percentage chance to like, you know, convert, right? That's just the nature of it. They're playing the most cutthroat strategy. They don't necessarily care if they don't have like a creative, like, you know, they're not really satisfied checking the creative box or whatever, or like they don't really care who the commander is. They're just here to win. They're here to like place, get their cash, like $200 and like leave, right? Like that's their goal, right? And of course, this isn't to say you can't be creative and do well. It's just much harder, right? And recognizing that it's a harder path is gonna, I think, lead to more success and lead to less heartbreak. Because I think the idealistic goal that if I put enough time, I put enough effort, you know, practice enough, I should be doing better. I should be as good as anyone else. Sorry, that's not how it works. There is a like meta. There is a power level. There are external factors you can't control. You can practice, you can get better, you can be the best player you can to shore up kind of like the chances of failure. But if I play Fibble Flip Mono Blue and I'm like the best player in the universe, I'm pretty sure I won't win as much as if I play Rogsai or whatever, right? So I think you get the point. I think the takeaway here is just like, as a player, you should just recognize what your goal is and just be frank with like the experience of like, it's okay to lose. I'm here to learn and I'm here to be the best player I can be, right? There are secondary, like, you know, whatever other objectives you have can supplement that, right? You're on this path. You can be on this path to be the best player because you want to be the best X player, right? But if you don't have both, if you don't have that like honest journey, you're only playing for ego, and that's going to ruin you. Like just when you go to a tournament and you're worried about like, if I don't do well, it's a reflection of my deck. This is a reflection of like who I am, all that stuff, right? If you're going to an event with that mindset, you're going to lose because there's, again, that limitless player who's just like, I'm here to win money and I like playing. All right. They might not even like playing. They're here to, they're here to win money. More likely the person who likes playing is going to do better than this person. But you get the idea, right? Like they're not questioning themselves like, oh, you know what? Like holding their cards and being like, if I lose this game, I'm going to be a joke of the Discord. You know, like, yeah, of course you're going to lose that game because someone else isn't doing that. Someone else is like, I'm here to play my cards and win the game. That's it. So I think I've covered the behavior part. So let's talk about the last section, which is practicing like meaningful good practice. Here's how I would practice for cEDH. If I could travel, if I didn't have like multiple jobs, and if I wasn't kind of like engaged with other formats more, here's how I would actually try and break the format and be the best player I can be. And here's how I recommend everyone to do it. There are very good players you can talk to and practice with, but what you need to do is you should find 3 players that you share the same goals, right? The goals of being the best player you can be and also love playing Magic or cEDH, right? And then have all 4 of you like have 4 different decks, or just have like all the meta decks, you know, ready for you to play with, and then switch off with each player, play a game. After the game's over, stop and reflect, right? And ask, what's happened? What was that actual decision point in that game? There's infinite decision points. A lot of it doesn't matter, right? Like you can take a photo of your opening hands, etc., to talk about that. But the idea of why you want to do this with 3 other friends is because the goal, and this is classic Magic testing team kind of like knowledge, is that you're as good as your peers are, right? So when all 4 of you are learning together, you're going to learn 3x faster because you're getting their knowledge as well, right? And once you all start improving together, first of all, this is going to save you time. And second of all, it's going to make you a better player because when they're better and starts pushing you, you're going to be better, right? It's like an endless cycle, right? So if I were to compete in cEDH and I really want to like do well, I would schedule that like once, twice a week, depending on how many hours you have, and make sure the games you're playing are you know, useful, right? I cheat a lot when I practice, and this sounds bad, but it's not exactly what you think it is. What I do is I will take a deck that I'm playing and I'll find a friend and be like, can you play, this happened very recently. I was playing Blue Red Cutter in Standard, and I asked a friend, like, can you play Jeskai Control? And I played 20 matches, 10 matches alternating who goes first pre-board, 10 matches alternating who goes first post-board. And there are times where like my opponent will be like, I'm stuck on mana, I'm like, just draw a land, right? Or there'll be times where I'm like, dude, if I don't like draw a card, like a whatever card here, I'm gonna lose. I'm just gonna swap it in. Or I might even open a hand with a sideboard card, right? The goal isn't if you win or not. It sort of is. The goal is like for you to test information so that you can like kind of answer that question before you go to a tournament. So like if you're, I mean, obviously you don't have everyone mulligan to like the perfect 7 every game, but there's times where like if a one player is like, oh man, if I don't draw a land by this turn, I'm definitely out of the game. Like let them tutor the land, right? Or whatever you need to do. Like the goal, because if they don't do well, the only information you're gaining is like, well, I get to beat Kinnan when they can't draw their second land and have no land source and can't play Kinnan, right? Like that's not useful information. What's useful information is when they're doing their average thing and you trying to spot like, well, does this card line up with this? Does this strategy actually stop Kinnan? Does this strategy stop Kinnan? Where are the breaking points? How do I arrive to those breaking points? How do I get around? Like, how can I sequence my like game plan where like I can beat 2 other players or whatever, right? How does it feel when I jam Rhystic Study here or Mystic Remora here, right? There's infinite questions you can ask that I think are meaningful for you to be a better player. So when you go to a tournament, you're like, I know what's happening, right? It's about finding those questions and answering them as a group together. And you don't need a coach for this. A coach, again, can tell you these are the type of questions you should be asking, but they're only giving you one player's perspective. Of course, an experienced one, but you don't need that. You just need 3 other players who have the same drive and same kind of ability to be honest and practice and work on it together. I guarantee you doing that is going to lead to much faster results than you working with a coach like once a week for an hour, a couple of hours, because the mode of engagement is different. You're not gaining reps, right? The way you're viewing it is from a more analytical review point of view, where it's like, yeah, like you can watch a video, someone can tell you the theory behind. I could do that. I could show cEDH players, like I could probably take a play to win video and play it here and talk about like, oh, these are the tactical things, and you'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. But that doesn't mean when you play that game and you hit that point, you're going to know like, oh, that one time Rebels said that, like, I should be doing this. Like, you're not going to do that. Maybe you would, but like most of you won't, because you don't, again, going back to what I said earlier, you haven't trained your brain to recognize that pattern from that context to be able to solve it easily, right? You're going to be figuring out, well, I watched it in this video. How do they beat it? You know, I think I should be doing this. If you're asking those questions, if you're thinking about that when at live game time, you're wasting mental energy and you're not good enough. That's okay. We're here to get better, right? So I think I'm going to end the video because it's getting a little long as usual. But I think the final part I'll talk about is playing tournaments. I think goal setting, realistic goal setting is very important. If you're in that first late level that I talked about where you don't kind of like have that built-in knowledge of understanding of what the format is about, what the decks are doing, and you're going to compete, I would say that your first experience should just be like making sure that you are able to make, actually, let me take it back. I think when you compete, it should only be one goal. It should be making as many good plays or the best plays or as tight as you can play as possible. And every time you compete, reducing the amount of mistakes or leaks that you have, right? The reason why we don't focus on results is because results are kind of a distraction. You can play supremely well and still lose the event. And if you only focus on results, that's again in the way of you actually improving. An anecdote that I have is, this is for myself, is I was practicing Modern like last year. And I remember I was doing a lot of coaching. Not to like speak ill of my coaches. Love all my coaches. They're great. Watch my coaching channel. They've actually expanded my knowledge of Magic a lot, right? And that's the value of what I have with an experienced coach. Is I have experience, they have experience. We're able to compare notes and expand my thinking, right? But I'm already at the baseline level of like, I kind of know like a lot of simple ideas. And that usage of that hour, super helpful. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I was playing Modern, and I remember I was playing against Hardened Scales, and I lost Hardened Scales 1-2. This is like a local like F&M, right? No stakes. But I was practicing for a bigger event, and I remember I was so upset and disappointed in myself that I couldn't win that match. That was supposed to be favored or whatever. That the opponent was like, "Hey, are you okay?" Because I was like, it's like on my face, right? I'm not like being mean to them or anything. I shook their hand, all that stuff. But I was so emotionally distraught. And that happened recently where I played with another person at LGS where I beat them. And they were very clearly very frustrated that they can't beat me. I'm playing a dumb deck in Modern. And every time we play, I 2-0 them or like 2-1 them, very consistently. And they're very frustrated. And for me, it's another Tuesday. Like, as I was kidding about how like my friend doesn't wake up till the finals. Like I was taking my game actions. I go to F&M to practice, like just putting down cards, solving problems. The outcome literally doesn't matter to me. If I win that pack at the end of the night, has no bearing to like what my goal is. Just to play as tight as possible. I'm there to count how if I'm solving the right problems, if I'm like playing the deck well, etc. The result literally doesn't matter. And I think that's kind of the behavior you need to take if you want to be really good at cEDH or Magic in general, is that ability to just really focus on how good your plays are. And it's hard because until you have more understanding or perspective, it's hard to say what's a good play and what's a bad play. I think the point is just at the time, if you feel like you're making good plays, good. Try to perfect it, right? But if you're making a lot of mistakes, asking yourself a lot of questions during a match, try to compete and practice until you ask as little, or as I said, ask only the relevant questions. Ask only the relevant questions. Okay, I missed one last thing I didn't talk about. There's one other activity I like to do when I do coaching. When I did coaching, I don't coach anymore. First of all, I'm washed. Second of all, I don't think it's a good use of your time. You can do it yourself and save yourself the money, your hard-earned money. Other thing is just sit through your mulligans and think through your entire game plan, right? If you can go through, like if you can hit a 7 and be like, how am I exactly going to play this through? What land am I going to fetch? What card I'm going to play? Why am I playing this, etc. If you can get into a mindset of just at least understanding and thinking through your plays in a very detailed manner, that's also going to help a lot, right? So you're not like 7ing, oh, I think this looks right, probably, right? And then when you're playing, like, I think I should fetch this because, like, what if I draw like a swan song, or like, should I play After Sentinel for, like, if you're asking those questions again, not good enough. That's okay. We're here to practice. But spend that practice time on your own solving that, right? So when you can do that, first of all, that mulligan exercise of yourself, you can do that game plan exercise with your opponents by yourself. And when you meet up with your 3 friends, you save the time, right? Time is of the essence, and just make sure you are most productive with that time, and also just enjoy it. If you're practicing in cEDH or any competitive game and you're not enjoying the process of practicing, dude, don't do it. It's not worth it. You could spend your time flipping burgers at Wendy's. It'll make more money, if you're playing it for prize or whatever. I actually don't know how much Wendy's pays. I assume it's pretty well. Anyways, that's the video. Let me know what you think, and best of luck to everyone who's competing.